So that's the story, the lesson. The application is move forward, get better, don't give up. And the call to action is kind of that, keep going, don't give up. So that's the Slack method. Story, me and Luke. Lesson, things are hard when you start. Application, don't give up. Call to action, keep moving forward. That's how you do it.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good night, depending on what part of the world you're visiting us. I'm Daniel Marcos, your host of the Learning Out podcast, and we're going to talk about storytelling. Super important if you want to scale your company is to be a better storyteller. And today I'm with Cody Burch. We met some years ago. We haven't been in contact recently, but every time I go online, he's always there. He's telling great stories. So we're going to talk a lot about that. Cody, just quickly, is a specialist in helping people grow their businesses, funnels, Facebook ads, YouTube ads, everything, and really be able to capture the attention. And of course, to be able to capture the attention, you have to tell great stories. Vern Harnish, my partner, always says, if you want to dominate your industry, you have to dominate the ink of the industry, whatever is said in the industry. And that's where Cody is an expert. He has a book called The 1 Hour Funnel, 9 Steps to Creating Your High Converting Sales Funnels in under 1 hour. And of course, the creator of the 1 Hour Funnel System. Hey, Cody, how are you? Welcome to the podcast.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me today.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about copywriting, about stories, why they're so important in marketing, and how do you use storytelling to really be able to grow your business and be able to grow the leads of your business.
Yeah, I believe that the best way to grow your business is to have a really engaged audience. And the best way to have an engaged audience, I believe, is by telling stories. And here's how I know that. I actually have had 2 rounds of entrepreneurship. The first is when you and I met the first time. It ran from 2017 to 2022. I was helping people with funnels and Facebook ads and hosting live events and launching coaching programs and memberships all around helping people leverage the power of the internet to grow their business, grow their list, make more sales. And I was hosting events before the COVID pandemic, and I was opening the doors to a coaching program. Well, somebody that joined that coaching program, they were my best coaching client. They were growing really quickly. They were implementing what I was helping them with, and worked together for several years. And in 2022, they made me a job offer I couldn't refuse to burn down almost all of my agency business to go work for them full time as their marketing director. And that job didn't work out. Long story short, 6 months later, after them hiring me, I was abruptly let go right before the Christmas holiday in 2022. And that started round 2 of entrepreneurship. So I was really upset to lose my job. That's never easy. I don't want to gloss over that and say, well, I was fired on a Friday and on Monday I started back. It took a little bit of time to be strategic and to think, well, what do I really want? I had the previous business of the agency model. I had a small team. I had several retainer-based clients, and I got to get really clear on what I wanted and what I didn't want as I built it back. And a funny thing happened. I was documenting the journey. Once I was ready to open up emotionally and let people know that I'd been let go from this job that was important to me and how I was building it back, I was telling stories in my emails. I was telling stories on social media and just letting people know what steps I was taking to build the business back. And within a short amount of time, within about 2 months or 3 months, people were commenting saying, hey, your stories about you building your business back is like my favorite part of the internet. Watching you make these decisions and taking these strategic moves and taking these risks and having some successes, but also having some losses and sharing the whole journey is really profound. And then I thought, there's something to this. There's something different about building a business back. Because when I first built it, it was honestly, Daniel, based on tactics. I wanted to have the best tactics, like the best funnel tactician or advertising tactician. And it worked okay, but it worked way better when I could tell more stories about where I had been, where I was headed, who I was becoming along the way, and then helping other entrepreneurs tell their stories as well. My audience engagement went up. I became known for something as a storyteller in marketing to be able to tell better stories so you can grow your business. And that accelerated my rebound from getting let go. Now it's been about a year and a half. Within about 3 to 6 months, I was really back on my feet. And then 2023, last year, was my best year ever by every measure. I made the most impact, I had the most independence, and I had the most income, the most profit. And it was all based on the back of an engaged audience that was engaged. It was so engaged based on the power of storytelling. And that's why I care about it so much.
So let's talk about a funnel. You have this book about a course about how to do a funnel in an hour. A lot of people believe that building a funnel will take them months and turn their business around will take them months. How do you build a funnel in an hour?
Well, when you get really clear on the transformation you want to create, I always start there. I think, well, what outcomes am I trying to create? Now, a funnel, for those that don't know, it's the step-by-step customer journey process that you go from taking someone that doesn't know you into someone who's working with you and becoming a customer. So I get really clear on the outcomes that I want to create, and I'll give you a really simple example. Let's say I want to help people tell better stories and say, that's the outcome I'm trying to create. If they tell better stories, why does that matter? Well, it matters because they have a more engaged audience. They have a more loyal following. It makes their competition look irrelevant. It makes AI look outdated already because AI doesn't have our stories. That's the outcome I want to create. When they do that right, they'll make more sales, they'll grow their business, more income, more impact, more independence. That's the promise. So that I do that first. What am I trying to do? Why does that matter? And on the flip side of that, what if people don't get that solved? What if they don't buy my product on the back end and they don't get better at storytelling? What's at stake? What's the cost of inaction? A lot of people talk about ROI, the return on your investment. There's also COI, which is the cost of inaction. If you do nothing, then your message gets drowned out. You're not seen as the obvious choice for the people you feel called to help. Your competition starts sounding really sweet. You feel more of a commodity. You're not a one-of-one option for the people you want to help. And that's all a problem. So get clear on all that first. What outcome am I trying to create? Why does that matter? What if they don't do anything? Great. Then I start to think, well, how am I going to provide that? How much time do I need to unpack that transformation? Is it a little bit of time and it may be a little bit of transformation, so it's not as expensive of a product like a $30 workshop? Is it a lot of time and I need a lot of time to unpack that and it turns into a 6-month coaching engagement? Let's say for this example, I want people to learn the storytelling structures in a live event space, and I'm hosting a live event here in a couple weeks. So let's say that's the example. That's what I'm trying to sell. And it's a 2-day event. And I think, well, what needs to happen before that? Who would be a good candidate for that? Well, I want to understand the market, my avatar, who am I trying to help? And so there's 2 ways to do that. One is like how wide you can go. Let's say I like to help a lot of course creators, membership site owners, solopreneurs, people with small teams that are growing an expert-based business. So they're turning their information into income, their expertise into earnings. That's what they're trying to do. So that's fine. That's the category. But then I also want to understand the depth. Are they just getting started? Are they having some momentum? Or are they leading their field? Who do I want to work with in that? So part of it is wide, part of it's vertical. And once I find those people, I think, well, okay, that's who I want to help and who I'd want to buy my product. What problems do they have? And list out their problems that they have. And then I start to think of solutions that I can offer those people with those problems. And to be really tactical, let's say this is a real example. I want to identify people in the world who want to grow their business on the power of storytelling. So I create a free resource that's called 202 Story Ideas. I write a daily email. So I've written about, 2,000 emails in the last few years. And so I took my best story ideas and hooks from those emails and I put it into a downloadable checklist people could download for free, print it off, never run out of story ideas again. If you download that checklist, I know that you're interested in some way of growing your business on the power of storytelling. So to answer your question, in all full circle, I want to help people with, let's just say the product is a 2-day storytelling intensive or a storytelling workshop. I want to find out what problems people have when it comes to telling stories. One of those problems is I don't have enough ideas for stories. And so I give that away for free and then say, hey, now that you have that, if you want to get really good and really accelerate your results, you should come work with me. So that's the formula. And then it doesn't take long when you got all that sorted out. You just need, you need some technical pieces. You need a way that they can opt in for your resource and then a way that they can buy your product. And that's why when I set up a new promotion or a new offer, it doesn't take me long, and how the whole 1-hour funnel idea was created years ago.
For copywriting or stories, do you follow a formula like this, building a story brand or something like that? Or what do you follow?
Yeah, I've developed a really simple process that anybody can remember and use, whether you use email, which is my preferred medium to tell these stories. We can also use it on social media, on podcasts, on YouTube, on any interviews you're doing, on Reels or Stories or TikTok or wherever. But the simple storytelling structure, when I invented the structure, it was in email, so you may not need the full thing, but it's an acronym and it spells SLACS. It's not like you would usually write it. It's SLACSS. So if you read it, it's SLACS. Now here's what that stands for. I'll start at the bottom because the SS stands for super signature, which is an email marketing tactic that I learned from a guy named Dean Jackson. And Dean Jackson, super signature goes like this.
I know.
At the end of an email, you'd say, hey, PS, whenever you're ready, here are 3 ways I can support you on getting your goals. And I usually do something free, something cheap, something expensive. So that's a super signature and maybe not relevant to like a reel, but you could definitely use it. So let's go back to the top. So the S is the story. Yep. The L is the lesson you learned. The A is how they can apply that lesson to their life. And then the C is the call to action. So that's the SLAC. And the SS is your super signature. So for the story part, I just take a simple story. I teach in a method called the story tree. So if you picture a tree with branches and there's leaves on that tree, you just pluck a leaf off that tree. You tell the story that comes to mind, and then you share the lesson that you learned and then how they can apply it to their lives to save some friction and some pain and discomfort is they apply what you learned on their behalf, and you give them a call to action, which could be click a link, watch a video, comment below, like, share with a friend, high five a stranger, buy somebody else's coffee today, like whatever your call to action is. But that storytelling structure makes us unique because we're telling our own stories and our own lessons. And then the call to action is we want our audience to understand that when we talk, we're unique with our stories. We've learned something, so we have some insights that would benefit them. And then the call to action is that we have some persuasion and we can guide them to do things. And that's why I say at the very beginning, Daniel, the best way to build your business, in my opinion, is to have an engaged audience. And an engaged audience is one that likes your stories and they're used to doing what you say with your calls to action as you're telling your stories. Does that structure make sense? The Slacks structure?
Love it. Very, very simple. Just one thing, Dean Jackson, great friend, great marketer. I learned from him also the 9-word email. Yep. It's brilliant. Just at the end of any campaign, someone that doesn't know it, you write an email saying, hey, are you still interested in whatever, scaling your company, writing a great story or whatever? And the engagement of the people coming back and said, yes, when you do a funnel and you'll know better, you sell these emails. And there's some people that are never engaged because they're busy or whatever. And when you get that email, they just light up and they connect again. We use it often. It's game changers, so we learned it.
Yeah, it's a great
and it's incredible. Those very, very simple things, the signature, very simple. Everyone puts on their signature, the CEO of whatever, just put what the client needs, right? Just give them the help they're looking for. Very, very cool. Thank you, Cody, for that. So let me go back to what makes a great funnel around storytelling. Storytelling is just kind of the way you're walking through. What else needs to be on a funnel to be a successful funnel?
Yeah, I put stories everywhere. So let's say I'll stick with my example of my 202 story ideas as a lead magnet, as a free resource. People exchange their email address in exchange for that PDF or that download. Inside of that, there's a story in the beginning. So some people would say the tactic of, hey, my name's Cody, here's a bunch of story ideas, good luck. And I tell people how I came up with the story ideas. And the story behind that is it was Christmas Day, recently, 6 months ago. Kids were watching a movie that I wasn't following, some wizards and dragons, and I didn't know what was going on. So I got kind of bored and thought, man, people sure struggle to come up with ideas for their storytelling. I'm just going to look through all my emails I've written the last couple of years and get my best hooks and best story ideas and put it in a Google Doc. So that's a story about a resource I made that it cost me something. Like I didn't just make that up. I didn't run it through ChatGPT and think of story ideas. I wrote emails for years. I took the best story ideas and put them into a resource that you can use. So there's that implication that it's valuable, even though it's free, that it's valuable because it took me years to accumulate that amount of skill and that amount of hooks and ideas. So what I just did, Daniel, is I answered your question with the story of how I made the lead magnet. So I have a story inside the lead magnet. I have a story about storytelling. I have a story in the Facebook ad that promotes the lead magnet. I use stories everywhere. It takes us out of this rigid marketing lingo. And I'll tell you a story. My wife and I last summer, we did salsa dancing lessons. And I'm not much of a dancer. I can clap to the rhythm of the songs at church or whatever, at a concert, but I'm not a dancer. Neither is my wife. She has good rhythm too, but we're not dancers. So we signed up for salsa lessons and the first lesson went as bad as you could think. Everybody's stepping on people's toes and I'm going left while she goes right. It was a whole nightmare. But over time, we got a little bit better. We did a 10 lesson block. By the time we were done, we were still pretty bad, honestly, but we knew some of the steps, like left, rock forward, left, pause, rock back, right, pause. But it was still really rigid. And that's how I don't want people to do their marketing. So if you try to always look for the latest tactics or the latest script or the latest template to sound smart, to grow your business or to write a Facebook ad, it makes it lifeless, kind of like me trying to learn how to do salsa dancing. There's no style. There's no panache. It just is this blocky thing. It's way better when you tell stories. Your ads are better when you tell stories. People relate to stories. When your kids were little, when you were a little kid, you ask mommy or daddy, tell me a story before I go to bed. And when they're done telling a story, what do you say immediately after that? Tell it to me again. We're just wired for as long as humans have been around, telling stories of which cave to avoid and which saber-toothed tiger was hiding behind which bush and which berries are poisonous to eat. Telling stories is what helped us make sense of a confusing world. And so we bring that forward. It takes the pressure off of us to have these deep insights and connect these reflective philosophical dots and just think deeply. I'm not that smart. I'll just run out of ideas if that was what I had to do, but I can definitely tell a story of my life and of my experience to help people make sense of a confusing world and help them move forward. So I use stories in the ad. I use stories in the lead magnet. I use stories in the email. I teach by story. I answer questions in stories. And inside the resource itself, at an event or a workshop or a product or a coaching program, it's mainly story based. I do it all the time. In fact, last night, somebody messaged me. I don't know this person. We have a mutual connection. And she said she had a problem. And we were talking back and forth, just typing. And I texted her something last night. She had this, she was having a bad experience with a vendor that I don't know, but we were just talking back and forth. And so I typed her really powerful words. I said, "Can I tell you a story?" And I hit send. And she, leaned in and immediately texted back, "Yes, I love stories." I know you love stories because you're a human being. We all love stories.
Yeah.
So then I flipped on the voice recorder and told her a story. And then she replied back something that was really moving. This is just last night. It was really moving. She said, "Cody, as I heard your story, a wave of calm washed over me." And I thought, wow, that was really powerful. I was just telling her a story of an experience I had 2 months ago, but something about that helped her make sense of her situation. So you're never going to convince me that stories don't matter in our marketing, in our business, and as we're creating influence and impact with our expertise. I don't care what industry you're in. Tell me a story. I want to hear it. You're going to go mow my lawn? Tell me a story. You want to sell me a supplement? Tell me a story. How'd you create it? Why does it matter? Tell me stories of people who've used it to have a better life. You want to sell me marketing coaching? Tell me a story. You want to host a live event? Tell me a story. It's just my favorite thing to do. So I don't kind of.
You've said so many important things in the back. By the way, as human beings, the way we pass knowledge was through stories. The tribes meet around the fire, and the elder were telling stories to the young, right? Stories, we get hooked and engaged as human beings. Super, super important. And then when you're telling a story, you were telling me a lot about you, your wife, your kids. So the story that you told me about your wife, you tell me that you love your wife, you want to do some things with her. You and her decided to do something new. So you have an excuse to go together and do something together, learning together. All the effort you were doing, and you're telling me on the back that your marriage matters. You and your wife are trying to get closer. Like, you told me so many things in that story that it was brilliant. And that's why I love stories. And by the way, there's not easy to tell stories, and people sometimes believe they're going to be boring if they tell a story. No, that was the most engaging part. So I love that. Really, really cool. So how do you get people excited about telling stories? Because we're afraid of telling a story. We're ashamed that we're going to bore someone, or they're not going to care. Or sometimes we're telling a story to someone that doesn't care and they just turn around. So how do you convince people to tell stories no matter what?
Yeah, I'll answer the why question first, and I'll tell you the how as well. So the why people don't tell stories, I have found, is we think our stories don't matter. So we'll say something like salsa dancing lessons, big deal. Or they think their life is boring. They think, "Oh, well, I don't know. We have 3 teenage boys, so I watch what they watch on YouTube, and they're watching, Mr. Beast videos, and he's flying around the world, staying in nice hotels and living this crazy influencer kind of life."
Yeah.
And so you watch that and go, "Well, my stories don't matter. I don't do that." And I'm the ultimate dad, work from home, live in the basement, work in the basement. I live upstairs. My wife lets me sleep in the big bed. Lived in the same house for a long time. My oldest kid is 17. We've lived in this house for 18 years. And I'm just this kind of boring cul-de-sac, pickup truck, Colorado American guy. I don't have this fancy life. We're not jet setters. I don't have six-pack abs or my own line of cologne. I don't own an exotic pet. I'm just a normal guy. So people get precious about their stories and say, "Oh, I need to have something really powerful. I need to have a near-death experience story to tell, or an exotic travel story, or a lavish vacation I took." Wrong. You're telling stories. My main go-to, Daniel, is something that happened to me yesterday. I've already done it with you several times. What was the most impactful part of my day yesterday? And so I start to think back and go, well, my middle kid, Luke, he's 15. He wants to go work out. Yesterday, he asked if I would go to the gym with him and show him how to use the machines. That happened yesterday. So my kid's first workout. Is that story worthy? Yeah, I could make a story about that, about doing something for the first time. And like you said, I'm spending time with my kid, implies my kids are important. There's a neighborhood community gym. It's kind of like an apartment gym. It's not a big gym. It's like a hotel gym. But I did that yesterday. That happened. Last night, we went to my dad's house. It's Memorial Day here in the US, and we had some burgers. Is that story worthy? I could probably weave a story around that. And I told you about the DM conversation about a person who was getting the bad end of a deal with the vendor. So I just think back, well, what happened yesterday that it can help them move forward? That's my go-to for stories. So people don't tell stories for a few reasons. They think their life's not interesting enough. So they get precious about their storytelling and say, "I need to have some epic story to tell, like Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit or Star Wars. I need this epic story." No, you don't. And they also think that their stories don't matter. And I'm telling you, anybody, you should try this today. If you're having a conversation with anybody pause for a minute and say, can I tell you a story? And I've never said that. And somebody said, nah, I don't care about stories. If can I tell you a story is a really powerful intro to a story, then you just tell them a story. So that's why people don't tell stories. And I'll share the how with you in a minute. But does that make sense, Daniel, on why people don't do it?
Very simple and a lot of sense.
So here's how I do it.
Yeah.
I was bad at English and like language arts as a kid. I was really good at math, but I was really bad at English. And so I had to look this up recently. I was hosting a storytelling event a few months ago. I'm doing it again soon. So I had to remember what is in a story, like in English class, or language arts class when we were in primary school or elementary school. How do you tell a story? And I forgot what they are, but stories have characters and time and place and tension and stakes. And so I tried to do that. So the earlier story about salsa dancing, I said it was last summer, so I gave you some time. I was with my wife, so you knew who else I was with. I didn't tell you this, but it was a private. I bought it off of Groupon or Living Social, one of those deals website, and we signed up for 2 sample lessons, and they were private. So I was in a studio with a teacher. It's me and my wife, so you can kind of picture that. Okay, dance studio. I know what that looks like. It's Cody and his wife. I don't know what she looks like, but and then there's this dance teacher. Eventually, I got the suede bottom shoes. So now you're picturing like, all right, I was dressed like this, like a flannel, jeans and suede bottom dance shoes, which is kind of funny. And so that's who I was. That's the place. So time, character, location, last summer at a dance studio with my wife and a private instructor. Got it. I can kind of picture that. What was going on? Why were we doing that? Well, like you said, I was trying to get closer to my wife. I was trying to surprise her. It was been married forever. So I've been married 21 years. So you look for stuff to keep the flame alive. And so I thought this will really surprise her. I surprised her with those dance lessons. We were going on a date night and she knew dinner reservations were at 7, but I said, we're going to go get drinks at 5, which was a lie. We had a dance lesson at 5. So I got her dressed up. She looked great. I didn't know what shoes she should wear. So I snuck a bunch of her shoes into the backseat of my truck just so she would have comfortable shoes because I was surprising her with dance lessons. And we did that. So what was at stake? Like I wasn't trying to save my marriage, but what was at stake was trying to deepen a relationship and connection with my wife. And I'll stop there. But that's like time, location, characters, who was there, what were you wearing, why did that matter? And you can do that with anything. Lifting weights with my middle kid, Luke, yesterday at the hotel gym. Looks like a hotel gym. You can kind of picture a hotel gym. My son's 15. You can picture a 15-year-old. And I'm showing him how to use the equipment. We walked down to the community center. It's a 0.8-mile walk. You can kind of picture that stuff. What were you doing? Why did that matter? I want to spend time with my kid. I wanted to get better at something. Okay, why are you telling me this? Well, because remember when you did anything for the first time? Your first ever landing page, your first ever email, your first ever podcast, your first ever webinar, your first ever sales call, your first ever client meeting probably wasn't very good. Kind of like my 15-year-old in the gym yesterday wasn't very good either. So that's the story, the lesson. The application is move forward, get better, don't give up. And the call to action is kind of that, keep going, don't give up. So that's the Slack method. Story, me and Luke. Lesson, things are hard when you start. Application, don't give up. Call to action, keep moving forward. That's how you do it. That could be an email, a reel, a podcast, a YouTube video. And I could tie it back to, my business. I help people build a laid back online business powered by storytelling, preferably in my world by email. Do it however you want. That's that in full display. So stories don't have to be precious. And that's how you tell story.
So now let's talk about the second part of that. Discipline and doing it. Like you said, hey, I went back to 2,000 emails that I've written, right? That's your format. And by the way, something I tell people, you always have to find your format. For me, writing, it's a terrible format for me. For me, videos are a much easier format. I don't speak English native. I learned Spanish. I grew up in Mexico until I was 25. So for me, writing in English is very hard. Writing in Spanish is hard. Writing in English is impossible. So I have to use a different method, and that's for me video. But you said something very important. James Clear, the guy about Atomic Habits. He said, hey, I was just writing emails because I like to write emails. It was something that I was doing for me. And I wrote so many emails and people said, hey, write a book. And then I wrote a book and it's been bestseller for many years. So you have to tell the stories, but you have to have discipline of telling the stories and engaging the audience. So tell me about that behind the stories. If you're doing a funnel, if you're doing a marketing campaign, tell me about the discipline, tell me about the repetitiveness, how much time you post on social media, things like that.
I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of a daily discipline, and I have a couple of weird habits. So here's my daily email story. So I would send emails sporadically. I would send emails when I had something to promote. And that's how a lot of people are. They'll send an email when they have a webinar, and then they won't send an email for 2 months. My first ever email went out in February 2018. It went out to 36 people. My second email ever went out 5 months later to 8. Not ideal. Not ideal, not very disciplined. So my list grew once that book dropped in 2018, I think. And so then the list started to grow pretty substantially. I was on Dean Jackson's podcast about the book, and that got a bunch of growth. But I still emailed my list, twice one week, once the next week, not at all the next week, 3 times the next week. It wasn't very disciplined. And then a friend challenged me to do a daily email for the month of October. So 31 days in October. I was skeptical, but I went ahead with it and sent a daily story-based email in October. A little clunky at first, like my 15-year-old lifting weights yesterday for the first time, but I stuck with it every single day. There were 11 of us in this challenge where we challenged each other to every day we just put our subject line into a Google spreadsheet. The rows were our name, the columns were the days. And after a few days, somebody dropped off. After 7 days, 2 other people dropped off. After 11 days, everybody else dropped off. By the time we were done, I was the only person that had finished that challenge to do a daily email in October. November, I went back to my old habits. December, back to my old habits. And then in January 2022, I'm not a big New Year's resolution guy, but I thought I'm going to do this. I'm going to build this loyal following via my email list. It's my most powerful medium. My Facebook audience could come and go. My Twitter audience could come and go. LinkedIn could come and go, but I own my email list. So on January 2022, I started sending a daily email, and I haven't stopped. And I don't know how many days that is, 2.5 years, whatever that time is, 800, 900 days in a row. But then I did another thing that people can learn from as well, because you're right, the medium matters. If writing is tough, or like I don't like doing videos, I'd rather write an email than host a YouTube video. But I launched a coaching program about 9 months ago, and as part of that group coaching program, there's a free app a lot of people know. It's called Telegram, and I just thought I'm going to make a Telegram broadcast channel, and every day I'm going to record a 3 to 4 minute audio to show these people in the coaching program how to think. Because I know they're going to get stuck. I know they're going to want to give up. I know they're going to do a launch and it won't work. They're going to write a lead magnet, it won't work. I know how they're going to start to feel, and I'm going to talk them through that while we're in the coaching program, which was a 12-week cohort. And I thought I would just be done. But at the very end of the 12 weeks, I opened up a back-end membership, and I just thought the Telegram channel, I didn't have a lot of feedback. I only had 30-something people in the program. And I thought the Telegram channel would go away. And I said that, and the chat on Zoom on a group call just started going into hyperactive mode. Everybody said, don't take that away from us. Keep the Telegram. We love that. That's my favorite part. I thought that's interesting. So I kept doing a daily Telegram. Now it's in a back-end membership called the Laid Back membership. But every single morning, I've already done it today, I record a 3 to 4 minute audio. I've done it for 9 months now. So however long that is, 200 days in a row, 300 days in a row, recording a daily audio for people in my coaching program. And the third thing I started was in January of this year, I started a daily storytelling podcast called The Morning Story. Every morning, I just pluck a leaf off my story tree and I tell a 6 to 7 minute story, and I close it like this. Until I tell a story, I give you a prompt. And the closing, I've said it a million times. Go out and share your story with someone today and share the lesson you learned along the way. I did that so people wouldn't run out of telling story ideas. So every day I've got a daily podcast. I got a daily email that goes to my whole email list. And I got a daily Telegram that goes to my coaching clients. There's just something about doing it daily. And what I hope will happen, Daniel, as people start to do this, I've helped so many people tell more stories in their emails and in their marketing, and the feedback has always been awesome. Nobody's come back to me and said, that didn't work, nobody cared, they all made fun of me, and they bullied me, and I'm never doing that again. Everybody says, this was so profound, it was so simple, and I had more fun than ever. Telling a story about my day or my weekend or whatever was so much more fun than 3 big predictions for my market in 2024. Like, that's exhausting. It's fun. And then you get that positive feedback to answer your question, Daniel. And that's what makes the difference, is you start to realize this is working. And then you'll meet people down the road and they go, hey, Dan, I got to let you know that story you told about the time you got that dog and then it ran away. But then you found it the next day. That story was so profound to me because I've felt the same way before. And I felt such a connection with you when I heard a bit more about your story. So that positive feedback you're going to get will be what keeps you going and keeps that daily discipline, or however often you do it. I recommend you do it daily, but be consistent. If you do 3 times a week, do 3 times a week and don't miss. You do Monday through Friday, but not the weekends. Do Monday through Friday, but don't miss. You do daily like me, 7 days a week, 365. Yes, on vacation. Yes, on my birthday. Yes, on Christmas. Don't miss. It builds trust, it builds reliability, makes you unique, and it's the cornerstone to everything that I do. So wherever you do it, if you do video, like you said, if you do audio, you want to write something, you want to blog, that's fine. Do it by telling stories. Do it as often as you said you would do it. So if you tell your audience, hey, every Friday I'll send you a new story with a new insight, don't miss. That destroys your trust. Staying consistent will help build that trust.
Very powerful. All right, let's go a little bit about learning before we close the podcast. How do you learn? What's your format of learning? What works for you? And then how do you grow your team for you to build a company? I know your company is very simple. You like to keep things simple, but you have a team helping you around. And the only way you're going to grow your company is if you grow your team first. So,
Yep.
so tell me, how do you learn? How do you grow your team?
Yeah, the learning part, you brought up James Clear and his excellent book, Atomic Habits. So I tried to do one of the things he teaches in that book, which is called habit stacking. So my preferred medium to learn is by audio. So I download a bunch of audio books, and the habit stack is I do it when I'm walking outside or when I'm hiking. So I'm currently training for basically a hiking event. It's in 4 months. So I do a lot of hiking, a lot of walking. I'm outside a lot. And I do that and I layer that on with audiobooks. Another trick that I do for myself that's worked really well is I'm learning, but I'm learning by revisiting concepts. Like I've listened to Atomic Habits 5 times. I'm really listening to 10X is Easier Than 2X by Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan. I just re-listened to all the Stephen Pressfield books, Turning Pro, Do the Work, The War of Art. They're excellent, excellent books. And so I don't just try to skim across the top of a water like skipping a stone in a lake. I try to go concept I'm learning right now. How do I grow again? I listened to 10X is Easier Than 2X I think it came out, I don't know, it came out recently. I listened to it about this time last year, and it had a profound impact on my business. Now a year has gone by. I'm like, I need that again. I want to go 10X again. What would that look like again? So I'm revisiting it. I forgot how awesome it is. And so that's how I learn. For me, what works for me is I don't have 1,000 different voices. I have like 5 different voices. I just listen to either all their stuff or I listen to the same stuff over and over again from that person. Like Seth Godin, there's an excellent book called The Dip. I just re-listened to that. It takes like 40 minutes to listen to. It's a very short book. And you go deep with those people. And then I implement what I'm learning from them. So I don't just learn something random and then never implement it. I learn something and I implement it as quickly as I can to get that feedback. So the best way that I learn is by the same person, lots of repetition, and then by implementing what I'm learning as quick as I can to get to test it for myself. The old saying of you can't teach a kid how to ride a bike by sending the kid to a bike riding seminar. Like they have to get on the bike and do it. That's how I think about everything I'm learning, tools, tactics, approaches, strategies, wisdom, and insights. I put them into action, see how they work. Some work great, some don't work at all, but at least I have the experience of implementing what I'm learning.
Awesome. I always write a list of the books I'm going to reread that year. I always like to read new things and get new stuff, but there's 2 or 3 I'm going to reread again this year. 100 Million Leads is an example. Hormozi, I read 3 times.
Yep,
It's just
very good.
Brilliant. And when you read it again and again, you get so much value. And you remember of things that you skip or you did wrong or whatever. So really love that. About your team, how do you grow your team? Because we know we have to grow our team. If not, we'll never be able to grow ourselves or in our companies. How do you do that?
Yeah, I'm at an interesting spot. So my experience with team in the past, when I had an agency, I had between 8 and 12 agency clients at any given time. This was years ago. So I had a person helping me with building the funnels. I had a person helping me with the ads, like manage the ad campaigns and the spends and the targets. And then I had a person helping out with events, and I had a person helping out with my operations. 2 of them, well, I guess they're all part-time, but that was my team. Now the pendulum swung then, actually that was right about COVID, and the model, because my model had grown kind of complicated where I had a lot of agency clients that needed a lot of dashboards, a lot of hands-on support, a lot of reporting, things like that. And when those went away around COVID, then I didn't need that team much anymore. So now I'm on my second round of entrepreneurship, and I've built it so far, some may say foolhardy, by myself. And I am at a point now where I've capped out. Like I know you're right. To go to my next level of growth, I need to start to implement a team structure. So my next moves I'm looking for is basically an executive assistant that'll help with some of those tasks of uploading coaching call recordings and managing a community. That might not be the same person. So a community manager would be extremely useful right now as my coaching program grows, as my online communities grow, my paid communities, and having an executive assistant. And then the other thing I'll need as I'm currently right in the middle of implementing a bunch of new frameworks for how I provide the transformation I provide. And ideally, like it's hard for us to scale ourselves, but it's not as hard to scale systems. And so what I'm doing is shifting away from that this is the Cody business to this is more of a laid back online coaching business. And you can coach, other coaches could coach the models. They could coach the systems. And so I'm right there at this tipping point of I've probably need to shed this layer of skin and grow to the next level with a team. And that's something I'm looking at doing this summer.
Very cool. All right, Cody, thank you very much. Really appreciate storytelling. Super important. You made it so simple, practical, easy. It just felt like normal. And by the way, when you're telling your story about, hey, I live in Colorado, I work in my basement, I work alone, like how fun or jet setter could that be? And you have great stories every day. So you're like a lot of people, as you said, oh, I don't have anything interesting. I'm not someone that is jet setting and all that. People don't matter. Probably
Yeah.
the best videos that I've done in social media is me walking on an airport. I fly a lot to go and see clients. So every time in an airport, that's the only time I have to do content. So I'm just walking to the terminal and just recording. People love it. But I'm
Yeah.
walking, I'm telling a story. Hey, I just had this issue with a client. This was the problem. This is how we solve it. This is what I learned, blah, blah. And I just do it on the corridor. I send it through WhatsApp to my team, and my team puts it in all social media, and they get millions of views. It's
Yeah.
just the power of doing simple things, and the discipline you built. Very impressive. So thank you for that.
Can I give one last tip
Please.
before we go for people? So if you're looking for better story ideas, it's the perfect excuse to do more interesting things. And I'll give you an example with a story.
Nice.
I went to a mastermind late last year, and it was in a city I'd never been to. I flew into Palm Springs, California, and the event was in Joshua Tree, which is a national park in California.
Yeah.
Never been there before, heard it was beautiful. But the event I was at didn't include lodging or a car, like a car transfer, so I had to get that sorted out. So my wife and I started looking at unique properties in Joshua Tree. And Joshua Tree is a very fun, bohemian, different part of the world. And so my wife found this castle I could stay in. I was like, oh, that'd be a cool story if I was staying in this castle. And then I saw that the restroom wasn't attached. It was like a few buildings away outdoors. Like, I don't want to go out and get eaten by a coyote. So I don't want to stay there. And then she found this glass house. The whole house was made of glass. And it almost looked invisible, but it was really expensive. It was like $4,000 a night. I was like, oh, that'd be a cool story, but I don't want to spend $4,000 a night on a glass house by myself. It was like a 6,000 square foot house. And then, but she found an Airstream, the travel trailer that looks like an aluminum can. And there was this park. It was a really nice park. All they had was Airstreams. I thought, oh, that'd be better. I've never stayed in an Airstream before. That'll just be a better story. And it wasn't prohibitively expensive. So I stayed in an Airstream, but then I had to get there. And a lot of people I used to look and say, well, what's the cheapest car? I'll just get the cheapest economy sedan to get me from point A to point B. I thought, no, I'll be in Joshua Tree, California. What's the most interesting car I can get? And so it wasn't that much more expensive, but I got a Ford Bronco, and it was this off-road edition, Sasquatch edition, huge tires. It had a lift. You could take the whole top off, and that's just more interesting. So if you're looking for better stories to tell, it's a perfect excuse to go do something more interesting or different. Go to take salsa dancing lessons, rent a weird car, stay in a weird house. And it's simple stuff. Go to a new coffee shop in town. Park in a different place that you usually park. Take a different route to go to that other pizza place across town. Just do something different. It helps you see the world different. If you can travel, great. We just got back from Italy. We're going to Costa Rica soon. Those are awesome experiences with our family, and they level up your storytelling because you see the world in a different place. You don't have to go to Italy. Just go to a different coffee shop across town, drive somewhere different, and drive a different car. Go rent a different car for a day. Just doing something slightly different is the perfect excuse to level up your storytelling and a great excuse to go meet new people and see new things. That's what I got to say.
Love it. Very simple. Thank you very much for that. Hey, if people want to follow your work, can they download the 202 ideas and all that?
Yeah, just go to codyburch.com. It's my name, CODYBURCH.com. And it's right there in the above the fold with the story ideas lead magnet. And just go ahead and download that. That'll get you on my email list, and you'll start to get my daily emails, my daily story-based marketing emails.
I'll do that right away. Thank you, sir. Thanks for being on the podcast.